So what I really wanted to do this morning was to give you guys kind of a feel for the broad range of research projects that CDCB is currently involved in. So as you can see, there are a ton of topics that I have listed up here, and I will try and cover them as efficiently as we can in 20 minutes. So starting off with our feed efficiency and emissions project. I wanted to give a little bit of background about how exactly we got to the point that we are today in having feed saved evaluations available. So in 2014 is really when the phenotype collection began with a project funded through NEFA, and the researchers at universities across the country began collecting this individual feed intake data. Coming to 2019, that project was wrapping up. They had learned that we can, in fact, select for animals with higher feed efficiency. So in 2019, we continued that project in collecting additional data through a project funded by CDCB and FFAR. With that project going on and with incoming data continuing, by 2020, CDCB was able to release the feed saved evaluations, and then by August 2021, we incorporated that trait into net merit with a new version of net merit at that time. So now today, we have over 10,000 individual RFI feed saved phenotypes that are going into the evaluations. It's about, I can't see what the numbers were, but a majority from the US Holsteins, and then some also coming from Canada. So as this project is wrapping up, we look forward to a new project beginning. This will continue the collection of individual feed intake records on Holsteins, but it will also begin to collect data on enteric methane emissions on those cattle as well. This is going to be made possible through a grant from the Greener Cattle Initiative, which is a consortium of stakeholders, including CDCB, and they are searching for research that supports scientifically based and commercially feasible solutions for reducing methane emissions. That's all I will say now, because later this morning, the lead researcher of this project will give you guys a taste of what's to come. All right, so we've done our feed efficiency and emissions, and now we will move on to some health updates. And under this category, we have several topics to cover. The first of which calls for a little change of color, and that's for Brown Swiss health evaluations. So as of August last year, we introduced Brown Swiss health evaluations. And given our participation in Interval and the primary efforts of Rodrigo Mota, we now have international data incorporated into those Brown Swiss clinical mastitis evaluations. Now, we did this also for Holstein and Jersey evaluations, but we didn't see much change in those results. However, when we incorporate foreign data for the Brown Swiss evaluations, we did see a significant benefit. And that is because there are two countries, Switzerland and France, that are contributing a large proportion of these data to Interval. And secondly, all of these bulls that Switzerland and France have clinical mastitis data on also have genotypes at CDCB. So that allowed us to see a significant improvement in our evaluations for clinical mastitis in Brown Swiss in the US. Moving on, the next topic in the health category are for Yoni's evaluations. This was research that began in Agile around 2009. Recently, we were able to collect some more recent data from cooperation with several DRPCs. And this became an internship project in 2019 for Taylor McWhorter, and then in 2022 for Larissa Novo. So what Larissa most recently did was look at a feasibility study of can we use genetic selection to improve Yoni's resistance. The good news there is yes. She identified that we could. There is a manuscript under review currently for her work that she did with CDCB with Journal of Dairy Science. And the next steps are to look at what is the best model moving forward from a production standpoint, and to perform a test run with that model and with the data that we currently have. This is all good news, but there are still several hurdles that we need to get through first before this becomes a public thing. We need to ensure that we have a routine pipeline coming for this data to come in continually, and we also need to address any data sensitivity concerns that may be out there because Johne's is a little bit more sensitive than some of our other traits that we currently have. So since we initially released health evaluations in April of 2018, we have seen significant growth in the number of phenotypic records that we have available, which is great. But given this growth in the number of records that we have, we want to go back in and ensure that the genetic component estimates that we are using reflect the bigger data that we currently have available. So right now we are going in and re-estimating variance components and heritabilities for all the currently evaluated health traits, those 6 that are available currently. And we are testing the impact of each of those updates with the end goal of being able to provide a better evaluation for all the health traits. And the last topic in our health updates is an update on our hoof health initiative. As of this summer, we had data available from both cattle eye and hoof trimmer records for 2 herds, one in Iowa and one in Minnesota. And so with our summer internships, one intern, Jonathan Layton, this was kind of his project to look at this initial raw data coming in, see how we could clean it, see how we can look at it, and see what the best way to use this cattle eye data coming in. So we wanted to see how does mobility score, as it's measured by cattle eye, up to a daily basis for every cow going through the milk parlor. How can we relate that to the hoof trimmer data, and how does it impact when the cow has a lesion? How does it relate to the conformation score, and how do these things impact production or longevity? So that is still a work in progress. That's where we are. There are 2 additional herds that, as of a couple of weeks ago, were recently brought onto the project. One in California with 7,000 cows and one in Arizona with 4,000. And there are additional herds being brought onto the project as well. Maybe. Okay, so that covers our health updates. But while we were on the topic of interns and the excellent work that they do for us, I wanted to touch on our other summer intern of this year, Joe Minwar Tibet, and his project focused on investigating the impact of crossbred daughters on bull evaluations. So we wanted to answer the question of, are reliabilities over or underestimated, if at all, due to crossbred daughter information? If we look at the Holstein evaluations, each of these little groupings along the plot is a separate evaluation, and we can see that most of the Holstein bulls are using mostly purebred daughters. There are a few that are using crossbred daughter information. The story changes a little bit when we look at Jersey. It comes almost flipped, where most of our Jersey bulls are having some crossbred daughter information. So for Joe's project, he used data for US bulls without incorporating any genomic or foreign information, just using domestic traditional evaluations. He saw that in Holstein milk yield EBVs, there was a slight bias, but we haven't yet figured out where exactly that was coming from. And he didn't see any large difference in the change of PTAs across time for either Holstein or Jersey. So this was pretty good news. In the next steps, we want to gain a better understanding of these results, figuring out, the answers to what we're seeing, and also investigate the impact of heterosis and how that will impact the reliabilities. So now moving on. So we're not going to touch on milking speed. Milking speed has a task force that was initiated by the CDC board, and that is a project that is in collaboration with Agile. So I will leave that discussion for Dr. Miles when she comes up after me. And we will move on to talking about some more data updates, data research, and modeling updates. So one thing I wanted to point out in this presentation that it's not just the innovation and research team that is doing research at CDCB. It's almost everyone really has a hand in the research. So this section will focus on what is happening in the genomics team, and specifically in data processing in order to improve efficiency and provide a better user experience. So looking to the future, we have to prepare to be able to handle and process more and more genotypes coming in. We're thinking upwards of 25 million genotypes have to be processed and stored. So in order to do this, the genomics team are looking for ways to simplify ingestion as well as decrease processing time, but at the same time as doing that, we have to always maintain the data quality and integrity. In addition to improving the efficiency, they are always looking and researching ways that they can provide a better user experience, providing a higher quality service, and generating relevant information for the users and for the dairy industry. We want to ensure that our system provides the information that the industry needs at the time and what you will need in the future. So this requires them to constantly be looking at ways to improve, ways to make the system better. Another project that is primarily led by the genomics team is the Constructed ID project, which was implemented, at least beginning, in April 2023. And this is to create constructed IDs in order to link calves to their maternal grandsire and maternal great-grandsire. So as I said, the implementation of this started in April, and the historical updates are happening in phases, so that is still going on as we speak. But overall, the goal of this project is to improve the accuracy. And what we have seen so far is improved genetic and genomic estimations. We're also better able to estimate the inbreeding of these animals, and we have seen a 1-point increase in the reliability based on the Constructed ID project. So now moving on to some more about modeling updates. Andres Lagar joined our team in January, and his focus is really on looking at the implementation of single-step models to the CDCB evaluation system. So what we are looking for is a pipeline using the BLEPF 90 single-step programs that runs actual computations in less than a day. In doing this, we need to identify meaningful results. We need to have genomic PTAs that we can compare, SNP solutions. We need to see that the trends are what we expect, with little or no re-ranking of bulls among those that have many daughters. We wouldn't expect the modeling to really impact how those bulls rank. So some issues that are being addressed or need to be addressed. Our National Cooperative Database is the largest database in the world, the dairy database in the world. So every test that Andres needs to run is taking a few hours or days if we're lucky. It can take much longer as well. So the software that he is using and has written parts of has not been fully optimized yet for a data set that is this large in a production setting like CDCB. So there's a lot of testing to be done, and creating realistic tests is also difficult. The current status of this project is we started with the fertility set of traits. And these are one of the more complex traits that we have, but they are also the traits that could potentially benefit the most from using a single-step model. And if we can get it to work with fertility, then hopefully everything may be a little bit easier going forward. So right now, Andres has worked on model improvements as well as software improvements, and working on a better theory of how to model missing parents in the model. The next steps are to include genotypes. They have completed a test run with 40,000 genotypes, which is really just a baby play scenario, but it did run successfully. And also testing the use of the APY method, which should improve the efficiency. All right, so we've done our modeling and our data. The next topic is lactation factors, which is another that is a collaboration with the team at Agile. So I'm going to mostly skip over that with only saying that CDCB welcomed a postdoctoral researcher in May, Malia Caputo, and she will be focusing on this project going forward as well. Which brings me to my last topic that I have time for. I wanted to bring up fertility, as it will hopefully bring some new developments and important developments. We know that the implementation of reproductive technologies has really shifted the way our industry works, whether that's through sex semen usage, timed AI protocols, embryo transfer. What we don't have a good grasp on is how that impacts our evaluations and how we need to account for that information in the best way possible. So that is what we are beginning to work on now. We are discussing and thinking of ways that we can look at this and research and try to answer these questions in order to develop better fertility evaluations for the dairy industry. All right, so this is really just a flavor of all of the research topics, or some of the research topics that CDCB is currently involved in. 20 minutes doesn't give me a lot of time to go in depth into many of them. But as I said before, I really wanted to focus on the fact that almost everyone at CDCB has some part in the research that is going on. We still work very closely with our colleagues at Agile in accomplishing this research as well. And there are a number of projects going on throughout the land-grant universities in the country, of which CDCB is either a collaborator in the project or supplying data from the National Cooperator Database in order to achieve these research goals.